Hello and welcome to This Glorious Mess. We are embracing the chaos together, ditching the judgment. I have lots of jobs, some paid, some unpaid, some fun, some not so fun.
Well, that's just the way the cookie crumbles, Tegan Natoli. I'm Annalise Todd. I'm a fumbling yet financially independent single mother of boys.
Today on the show, we're talking about the mum tax, which is the sacrifice many of us make when we take time out of the workforce to raise kids, and the very real gender gap in super that many of us have or will see. And we'll be chatting to our people and culture manager here at Mamamia to hear her take on the numbers and what the cost is.
We'll be sharing our own personal financial experience with taking time off work. I'm interested to hear yours, Teagues. And we're going to finish with some great advice from finance professional Canna Campbell, aka Sugar Mama, as to what we can do to help our financial futures.
But first, here's what's happening in my group chat. So I got sent an article in my group chat. It was a Mamma Mia article, actually.
Obviously.
I'll pop it in the show notes. But it was about an 8-year-old girl in suburban Ohio who wanted to go to Target and her mum or dad wouldn't take her. So while her parents were asleep, she took the car keys, jumped in their car, drove to Target, spent $400 in Target. That's pretty bougie.
That's
a lot of shit.
lot of things.
That's a lot of things at Target. And it wasn't until this little 8-year-old was spending up big money that they went, where's her parents or a guardian?
It seems advanced, independent.
Yeah, they alerted the authorities who came down and found her sipping on her frappuccino.
Tired from all the shopping.
I'm exhausted.
Oh, what a busy
I get
day.
my nails done after I pick up my frap.
She's really going places.
Well, historical historian, we know you love bringing some stats and numbers and info.
Yes.
So hit me with it. Why are we going to be talking to Yvette Bay today?
Well, women tend to retire with less super than men. We all know that. But the latest stats show there's actually a 25% difference. So the median or average super balance for men aged 60 to 64 is just at over $211,000 compared to just over $158,000 for women. Now, even the historical historian cannot speak with any level of authority on this. So we have called... No, she can't.
What do you mean?
And so we've called in an expert. It's our people and culture manager here at Mamamia, Yvette Bay. Yvette Bay is our people and culture manager here at Mamamia. So we've had a few awkward conversations. But one
Which
thing...
we'll keep private.
We
Confidential.
will. Thank you, Yvette. But also, Mamamia, there's 1,000 women, lots of pregnant people. So, Yvette, you've had many chats about mat leave.
Many chats about parental leave over my career.
Parental.
Sorry.
So, Yvette, what types of parental leave are available in Australia, and how does paid leave differ from unpaid leave?
Yeah, this is quite a big question. There's paid leave and unpaid leave. So there's unpaid leave is what your employer will give you, or if you're not employed or self-employed, you're not getting paid for that.
Yeah.
And then the government will, if you're eligible, the government will pay you. So during that unpaid portion. This is what
And is it capped?
Oh, look, we're one sentence in and I'm already bloody confused.
Maths
So I'm getting
equations
paid
and-
for my unpaid portion.
There's also your paid parental leave, which employers will often offer you as a competitive part of your employee benefits, right? So there's that, and you can also access government paid leave as well.
And so if you access your employment parental leave, does that then disregard the government one?
No, so that can be a combination.
The government then pays your employer and then they
Yes.
can sweeten anything on top. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's not legislation that employers have to give you paid parental leave.
Because there is that government one there.
Yes.
Right.
And also there's lots of really small employers which wouldn't be able to necessarily
Yeah.
afford it. But obviously larger organisations and companies that are competing with each other to get great talent
Yes.
can offer really generous paid parental leave.
Yeah. It's really interesting being a business owner myself, and not any of our staff have yet had babies, but I always wonder how it actually works because you know that there is that government access there, and being self-employed myself, that's the parental leave that I accessed. But yeah, then as an employer you're like, hold on, am I paying it or is the government paying it or is it a combination of the two?
Let's just use Mamma Mia as an example. If somebody's taking paid parental leave from us and they're eligible for it, so they've worked a certain amount of time, then they take their paid portion from us and then they might tick over into unpaid leave because they're taking, say, a whole year
Extra
off.
time.
And at that point, they've hopefully been eligible for the government paid leave, and then we get that money and then start paying it to them so that it feels seamless, like they're just getting paid in their normal payroll, and even though it's not quite the same amount as their normal pay.
Yeah. Okay.
And how is parental leave calculated?
It's usually your normal pay, your normal base pay. And it can be for a number of weeks. So some companies will say from a year, you can access 10 weeks, say, and then once you've earned 5 years service, it might increase the amount of parental leave. Or some companies are really generous. They don't have any service requirement. It's just like once you're employed and maybe past probation, they give you 20 weeks.
And is that often a perk for especially bigger companies, when hiring a woman or a man as well, because now we have the paternal leave. But is that usually, a bit of a sweetener when hiring as well?
Absolutely. It's a massive competitive edge to get really good talent because when women are searching, or like you say, any parents are searching for their next role, and you have an amazing parental leave policy to offer, that could be the difference between going for one job for another.
Yeah, so definitely something to keep an eye on if you are looking at a new role or a new job.
Yeah, absolutely. And most companies will be happy to share their policies with you.
Yeah, interesting. Now, can you explain the new paid parental leave scheme mentioned in the May budget?
One big benefit is that it's going from 20 to 26, and that's been the plan the government's had for a while, is to keep increasing it. At the moment, we have 20 weeks, and some of that can be used like between you and your partner, like whoever's the primary and the secondary carers. And now that's increasing to 26, which obviously makes a big difference for people just to have some money still coming in, especially if you take a whole year.
Yeah.
The other part was that they've increased this part. I'm actually still trying to get my head around, but they've increased the flexibility. So instead of saying like, I take my 20 weeks and I get paid, monthly, and then once that's used, it's used. They're saying that you can take a portion of that amount of your parental leave and use it for like one day. So say you return to work, you could essentially make it so that you work part-time and get government pay on the days that you're not getting paid by your employer up to your child's second birthday.
Wow.
As in you can take their second birthday off as parental leave, that's why I'm still wrapping my head around it.
Because in a lot of cases, when women do want to get back to work quicker, they then have to sacrifice that parental leave, right? Once you're back at work, you no longer have access to that parental leave.
True. If you've returned to work, then you don't have access to the government leave anymore.
Even if you return part-time.
Well, no, the part-time thing has been a little bit of a loophole for a little while. So some of it, but I think it was only something like 2 weeks that you could access as a flexible amount of time. So maybe for 2 weeks or a month or so, you could have used a few parental leave days. But tricky. This has made it a lot more flexible.
Like becoming a new parent's not complicated enough. You've just got to wrap your head around a whole parental leave scheme while you're at it. I remember when I had all my kids just sitting in. When you remember when you had to go in to like Centrelink or whatever it was to file your newborn?
I don't remember that period.
I do, because I think I'm traumatized. And I just remember having to sit there. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing. And I feel like I need a university degree just to complete these forms to just say, I had a baby, guys. I had a baby. Here it is. This is what it looks like. Give me that number thing, so that I can pop it in the system.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I was talking about this with people multiple times before I even had kids. And then when it got to me doing it, I was like, wait, what are we even doing?
System? Yes.
Well, the government. So now I can at least say to people, the forms are horrendous.
Yeah,
Just get
yeah, yeah,
started
yeah.
on them right now.
Yeah, and truly do. Not once you've had the baby, because you'll be beside yourself.
Yeah. Have you conceived yet? Doesn't matter. Start them now.
And Yvette, how does taking unpaid maternity leave affect long-term financial benefits like super or annual leave?
I actually really don't like thinking about this. I've got my head in the sand about it a bit. It's actually
I
really
think
quite
we all
devastating.
do.
Yeah.
But it's such a real problem,
It
that
is.
gender super gap.
Yeah. It's really sad. It is quite. I mean, I've done calculations and it is not great. Even on paid parental leave, some companies might offer it, like the really big, cashed up companies might offer pay super on top of it, but it's not a requirement. So when we were talking about paid parental leave and your base pay, you're not getting any super contributions during that time. So say you take 12 months off, that's 12 months where you're not adding. And say you're being paid 100,000 a year, for example. Nice round number because I can't do math.
And what's super at now? I think we've had a few jumps.
11.5.
11.5, yeah.
So that's
11.5%.
11,500 that doesn't go into your super.
And that's just one baby, one
1 year.
pat leave period. Some people, if you have multiple children and then you might return part-time, and then that goes down as well because you're not getting a full salary.
Yes. And then, so my calculations, again, rough, and based off some, figures like 7% interest and whatever, is that it could have a dent of about $80,000 in your super.
For one child.
Say you had loads of hypotheticals, but say you paid 100,000, you have a year off, you're about 35, you retire at 65. Yeah, it can take about 80K dent in your super.
And that's one child.
That's one. Well, I mean, you could have twins.
Oh, yeah, that's even.
That's me. But I'm self-employed, so we'll talk about that later. I'm screwed. Super. Super what? Superman.
Yvette, what can women do to safeguard? Like, what are some practical things that women can do?
Okay, don't hate me, listeners, because I feel like it's like, well, it must be nice. But some of the things you can do, and I did not do these, full disclaimer, is that you can top up your super. Like you can, say you're planning to have a child or it's a few years down the track, you could start topping up your super now, knowing that a big gap's coming.
Oh, that would have been good.
Yeah, so you can salary
15 years
sacrifice a
ago.
little bit extra each pay.
Yeah.
You can technically salary sacrifice your parental leave pay
Yeah.
or even the government pay, some of it into your super.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
But considering that it's based off minimum wage, what the government pays you, you're obviously
it's hard.
taking a chunk out of that to do it. But again, in the long run, it's good. You can also top up afterwards. Like say you're at this point of your life where your kids are older and maybe you've got some wiggle room, you could start topping it up now.
I don't know if this is going to sound really dumb. Like, can I still super off my husband before it's paid? Like, can I take his super income as my super?
You can if you divorce him.
Oh, okay. Okay. No, so
but otherwise the idea is if you're a couple, your super is then combined and you live off that together, and that's the whole point of one person takes the time off but then the other person's working and you meant to
so this is my point.
For the family.
Ignoring the fact that my husband owns a company as self-employed, say he worked for a bank and he's getting however much a year in super, because I'm off raising my kids, can we not make it so that it's contributed to my super fund or no? Oh, that's just part of being married, right?
That's part of being married. But if you do separate, and a lot of people don't realise, is that is an asset that can be split and divided. And a lot of people who don't have legal advice don't realise, but that is can be a very valuable asset to divide.
So I can get my hands on it when we divorce.
Yes.
Okay. So Yvette, you obviously see people day in and day out. What are some of the most common concerns or questions that you're asked among a workplace?
I find myself very humbled by the fact that women come and share this really, parents as well, just come and share this really amazing moment in their life. And you get quite a raw side of people, which I like to work with them through their questions. And I think one of the most common ones is a lot of people have worked really hard to get to the point in their career and they feel like by having a baby and stepping away for a time that they're going to lose traction, or that that everything they've done is for naught, or that no one's going to
Totally.
remember
Back to
them.
square one,
Yeah. And so there's a lot of fear around what can I do to like keep my job where it's at? Am I going to be overlooked for promotions? Like there's a lot of that fear. And it's one of the hardest questions to answer because there are not that many guarantees really with businesses. They change a lot and anything can happen. But the big key part, which is really hard to explain to someone, especially when they're having their first, is that you change so much. Like you really do. The person that leaves isn't the person that comes back. And I personally see in businesses, the person who comes back is almost a more exceptional worker. Like their life is so rich and they bring so many new skills back to the workforce.
And like you can't just sort of faff around. You've got to get in, work hard and get out.
I would be interested to see how many people have a plan or have an idea of how they think it's going to play out over the next 6 or 12 months. But that often changes once baby arrives, or maybe your partner gets a new job, or maybe you're like, actually, I thought I was going to go back after 6 months, but I'm going to push it back to 12 months. Things must change and evolve all the time.
Massively. And you really don't know what it's going to be like until you're in it, or the baby that you have.
Yes.
You can get epiphanies. You can be like, I never want to go back to that workplace at all. Or you can be like, I want to change the course of my life. I actually realized there's parts of my role that I loved and some I never want to do again. I mainly just try and reassure through that period. But also the advice that I always give is be as flexible as you possibly can be and really try and figure out what your values are while you're away. We can kind of plan for roughly when you'll be back and your role is held, like legally. But other than that, if stuff changes, just communicate back with your company. Like keep that dialogue going as much as you can. Obviously, you don't really want to think about work when you're so sleep deprived. But when you eventually have the headspace, talk to your work and be like, what's actually important to me? Because some of those things might be like shorter days is actually going to be the most important thing to me. And I'm willing to give on different parts of my role. Or maybe I need to be more remote. So how does that change parts of my role? Because some of it's FaceTime. So does my role need to change so that I have less of the FaceTime tasks and can do more of the things remotely to facilitate that?
But I love how flexible it is. Like when I was doing this over 12 years ago, Yvette, this was not an option. There was not, you can't do shorter days. You can't do remote. There was no, Google Meets. And I just love that in 12 years that this is an option now for women. You can come back in a different way.
And COVID helped that, funnily enough, in a weird way that I feel like COVID's made that possible, especially more so for women. I can do 2 days in the office and 2 from home. And I'm probably more productive when I'm at home.
Totally. And I know I'm speaking broadly. There's some roles that or companies that really just can't facilitate that. But it's still worth knowing what your values are, because maybe you don't go back to the same employer, and maybe with the clarity of the values that you need or the things that are most important to you, you find a role that actually fits that going forward. And that can still fit into your long-term career path.
Yvette Bay, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful Zen vibes with us. She's always such a beautiful grounding presence in the office.
Calm.
And you've brought that to this
I would want to come
mess.
to you. Everything was very insightful. Thank you, Yvette.
Thanks, guys.
I'm very scared.
Yes, Yvette had some beautiful, reassuring advice, but the reality is it's not great for women in general.
Yeah, and especially self-employed ones, I must say, because
so that is you, Tegan Atoli.
Yeah, I think I've got $2,000 in my super. I'm 37 with $2,000 because I have been self-employed since I was 19 years old. It's hard enough running a business, starting up a business. Like usually for a long time, you're lucky to even pull a wage. Like you're certainly not even thinking about pulling super. I love how petrified you look.
I have never been this speechless in my life.
I might just have to divorce my husband and pull from his super. But to be honest, I don't think he'll have any either because he's also self-employed. And I just feel like it's definitely, maybe it is for some, but I think for a lot of young business owners, it's not a priority. And
no, because you're just trying to make ends meet.
Exactly. You're just trying to get your business up and running, pay your bloody taxes without getting fined.
And people's
pull
wages.
an income. Like there's so many costs that your personal super is the last thing on that list.
I know, but and look, super is not sexy.
No.
People don't like thinking about it, talking about it. It's head in the sand.
Oh, well, I think about it all the time, but I'm like, it is what it is.
Because I feel mental age 28. So it feels so far away. But I'm 41. And
Yeah.
most people like to retire at 65. If we do the maths, it's actually not
That
as far away.
sounds so
as it-
young to me, 65. Do people really retire that young?
I think I would like to still work. Maybe not full time. It's tiring.
Oh, not full time.
It's very tiring working full time.
I don't want to retire at 65. I would be so bored.
I would like to jet off to Europe, but you have to then
That's
have
not called
all
a
the...
holiday. It's not retirement.
My super was definitely impacted because I'm not a business owner, but I took lots of time off and then I did freelance part-time. Like I was very higgledy-piggledy before I
Yes.
returned full-time.
Okay, so when you were freelance, did you pay yourself super?
Absolutely not.
Exactly. So, that's what I feel. I've been freelanced for 20 years. I think my mum said to me the other day, "Where's your super?" I'm like, "Oh, it comes up in my accounts." And she's like, "How much?" I'm like, $2,300 or something. And she's like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "Yeah, but I've like that." And that would have been from like my teenage jobs. Do you know what I mean?
I think,
'cause
Tegan,
literally...
after chatting to a vet and getting that advice and hearing that super amount that you have, I feel
Yeah.
like now is the time to prioritise
aged care.
just adding some super in. If I can take anything from a vet, like also you are married, so you're not a single income.
Yeah.
I would start putting some money into your
Yeah,
super.
just-
Is my historical historian financial planning advice, non-expert advice.
What's the difference? So does super have, oh, I should have asked a vet this.
Yeah,
Does
don't
super
ask
have a
me.
better interest rate, does it? Like what's the difference of having savings or having super? Like so having savings that I can touch if I need to and having super.
But I feel like you do get. I know you get more tax breaks from super. Like it's. If you've got
Yeah.
savings and you've got a high interest loan, you've got to pay tax on the interest you receive, whereas super you don't because the
Got
government wants you to
you.
have the super.
Yeah, because they're like,
They don't
"You
wanna
can't-
pay you the
can't touch
pension."
this. Do no 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 no. Do do super. Can't touch this. Do no 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 no. Do do super. You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. Well, we've been shook. We've been shook this episode. We've got a lot to think about. So much to think about. I can't talk. So now we're going to hear from Canna Campbell, aka Sugar Mama. She's a financial planner, author, speaker, podcast who is known for financial wellness and empowerment wisdom. That's what we need. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll book in a private session.
So
with her.
let's turn to her for some positivity, some punk hope,
Yep, some tangible advice.
and some empowerment
Yep.
wisdom on what we can actually do to help our financial futures.
So, what I would recommend anyone do is do a dress rehearsal. So, you've got to do a budget, of course, in the first place. Where does your money go? What direct debits do you have coming out on a regular basis? How much are they? And also do a bit of a cull. What can be cut down? Like, what can you cancel? What subscriptions can you potentially alter so that they're not as much? And then update the budget. One little hack that I highly recommend as well is to have all your expenses come out of one key account so that you only have to check one account when it comes to reviewing your living expenses rather than checking 5 different accounts with different direct debits coming out. And to add to this hack, what I highly recommend is having a schedule in your phone that actually has in chronological order of what direct debits you have coming out, who they are, and how much they are. So that when you check your account balance, you go, okay, I am 3/4 of the way through my pay cycle, whether it be weekly, fortnightly, or monthly, and I still have 2 more direct debits to come out, adding up to be $280. So that means you don't accidentally go and spend all that money before those direct debits come through. But if for someone that's about to go down to, say, one income, I would actually practice sooner rather than later, so as soon as possible, which is what I'm trying to say, what it's like being on one income. So pretend you've had the baby, you're on maternity leave, you've used up all the annual leave or maternity leave entitlements you've got, so that when it comes to showtime, you actually have already figured it out, and it's one less thing to have to worry about because you're now used to that system of having less income. But also have those conversations with your partner. Don't try and be a martyr and think, oh, look, I'm an independent woman, I can cover my share of the bills. Be honest and be practical. If you are not earning an income whilst caring for a baby or a loved one, say, how are we going to make this work? Put two brains together on the solution and go, okay, maybe we need to now make some changes to our budgeting. Maybe we need to make some changes to our cash flow and how we, run the money as a family unit rather than two independent full-time working individuals.
All right, how are we feeling now? I'm feeling a little bit more financially zen.
I am feeling a little better. I'm feeling inspired. There's a lot of food for thought, but I hope that, like us, that people took some practical takeaways of what we can actually do. And it is important.
Yes.
Because we're older than we are mental age.
I'm going to start contributing to my... Super. Okay, so thank you for listening to This Glorious Mess. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and we would love it if you left us a rating.
And if you have a dilemma you'd like Sarah Marie to solve, you can leave us a voice note by following the link in the show notes.
This episode was produced by Grace Rouvray with audio production by Lou Hill. See you next week.
See you next time.